Hello everybody and welcome to a brand new Elder Scrolls Online build video with me, Sherman. Today we're going to be taking a look at the Shaman class. This is the last, we have 4 more classes to go through, and this is the last of the 4. So I'm presenting it to you. And before I get any further, of course, I do have to put a not a description, but I do need to put a thing in here to let people know this is not a meta build. This is not an in-game meta competitive build. It can be used at in-game, it really can. It's just that a lot of people won't like it in the meta scene. So just warning you now. Alright, so let's get right into it. This is the Warden healer build that I came up with called the Shaman. It uses, of course, Magicka, but it uses the Breton for it. You can use any of the Magicka races. You can use the Dark Elf, you can use the Argonian, you can use Breton, you can use the High Elf. It's up to you. I just chose the Breton because of their passives. Are really good for healers. They get reduced Magicka costs, they get extra resistances, and they get extra Magicka. So that's why I chose that for this build. So 33k Magicka, 17k health. I know the health is kind of low. You can adjust that if you want, but don't adjust it too much because it can throw this build off. So 21k magic recovery, or 21, sorry, not 21k, 2,000 magic recovery, just about, whatever. 1,700 weapon or spell damage with 32% crit. The crit's kind of low on this build, so you do want to use power pots to get that crit up there, if because it helps out. And then the resistances and the physical resistance are kind of off too. So moving down the line, we have the Antronach Mundus Stone for extra magic recovery, and the Potent Witch Mother's Brew for magic recovery, max Magicka, and max health. Now, it's not quite as high as dual stat food, but that recovery does play in there, and it does help a lot. So, moving on to the gear. So the gear is going to be a little different on this build. I'm not using Combat Physician, as you can see. I actually removed Combat Physician because I felt like all my healers were kind of starting to feel the same. So I took that off, and I decided to go with a 3-piece, a 2-piece, and a 5-piece setup. So we are running a 2-piece Chokethorn set. And the reason why is the magic recovery and the healing that it can do. When you heal somebody, you have a 15% chance to get another heal off for 4 seconds for 22,300. And it is a heal over time. So Wardens don't have a lot of heals over time. They have a lot of burst heal. So having a heal over time really helps. And this allows you to have a heal over time. Now the next that we are running is Druga's Rest. And this has another heal over time as the 5-piece. But still, we're going to go over the 2, 3, and 4 first. So the 2-piece is Magicka, 3-piece is magic recovery, and 4-piece is healing done. The 5-piece is what is essential, though, because when you heal or deal damage with a fully charged heavy attack, you create a circle of consecrated ground that heals you and your allies for within 5 meters for 12,504 over 10 seconds. Now, it's about a 1.5k tick heal over the 10 seconds, like 1.2. But that's 1.2k heal over time, along with this, which can proc off of that. So this can proc off of that other one, and you can actually get more heals out, which is kind of nice, and it works. They work together really well. Now, onto the 3-piece jewelry, we are running willpower. Now, I would suggest using Wrath of the Imperium instead, because that does give you spell crit and spell damage. But that's only because of the critical healing. Your critical is so low right now, you kind of need the crit to get the heals to hit for critical healing. And critical healing, I know a lot of people say you don't want to overheal, but you don't want to underheal. So having a good crit amount really plays into any healer build anyway. So having like a 50% is really good for a healer. If you can get 60%, you're doing a little better, but you're really just getting more consecutive crits, and you don't need that much crit healing, unless you're playing a Nightblade. So, we are running 2 spell cost reductions here, and we are running 1 spell damage. Now, on the armor itself, we have 3 infused, and that's the big pieces with tri-stack glyphs. The smaller ones are divines with Magicka glyphs. And so you're running the shoulders, the gloves, the belt, and the boots with Magicka and divines. The bigger ones are infused with tri-stats. Now, right now, I'm just running the staff that comes with the Druga's Rest set because I didn't want to go grab a bunch of staffs from somewhere else. I just figured, you know, you're going to be using a staff anyways. You can, again, you can change these out for things like Master Maelstrom, the staves, if you want to. It's not like you have to, but they do help in some situations. So, like, the Master Resto staff really helps. The Maelstrom staff really helps because it does increase the damage of, like, Wall of Elements. So, both of those can help with a healer. So, right now, though, we're running a infused Ice Staff, and the reason I chose Ice Staff is because Wardens get Ice Staff bonus damage. They get 5% to Ice Staff damage. Bretons don't get any bonus damage. They don't get extra, like, 4% like a High Elf does. So this allows you to run that Ice Staff and get that benefit, that 5% benefit, making your damage a little higher. So that's why I chose Ice Staff. They do get a bonus to Magicka too. They get a 6% bonus to Magicka and Ice damage in their passives. So you can go with an Ice Staff and a Resto, or 2 Resto Staffs. You're still going to get that 6%. So that's why I chose the staffs I did. So the next one is a Resto Staff, and it has a Magic Recovery glyph on it, or Absorb Magicka glyph. You don't have to use Absorb Magic. You can use whatever you want, but for a new person coming into in-game, having all the resource management you can have helps a lot, because then you're not going to struggle as much. And once you become comfortable with the in-game mechanics, it allows you to go, okay, I'm comfortable enough with this, I can get rid of this glyph on my weapon and change it out for something else that's going to benefit the group, like maybe a Weakening enchant or a Crusher enchant or something along those lines. Right now we're running a Weakening enchant on the front bar because we don't need this on the front bar. We need this on the back bar because most of our magic return is going to come from the Resto Staff. Because when you do heavy attacks with the Resto Staff, you get a base of 30% magic return from no matter what. Okay, you get a 30% return of magic or stamina depending on what weapon type you're using when you do a heavy attack. With a Resto Staff, you get another 30% from the passive. That's a 60%. With champion points, you can get more, so you can really draw on that resource on those heavy attacks. Now, if you guys didn't know how a heavy attack return works, it goes off of this. So when you heavy attack, it takes 2 seconds. This takes 2 seconds to give back. So you get this number plus a percentage value of that number. So, like, for me, I get 74%. So 74% of 2,000 something is over 3K. So I get 3K plus 2K. So I get 5,000 back, almost 6,000 Magicka back when I do a heavy attack with my Resto Staff. That's why it's good to build into recovery, is so your heavy attacks actually give you resources back. Alright, so, moving on. That's it for the gear. So moving on to the skills. Now I'm just going to go over this really quick. Make sure you fill out your passives for your class, and just get all of them. Now you guys are going to notice I have a couple skills here unlocked. I will go over this, like where you can put these in case you want to use them over other abilities. So I'm going to do that real quick. So Growing Swarm, if you want to use this ability, swap it out with your elemental or your Wall of Elements on the front bar, just so you have an ability to get extra damage out. And it does do damage over time, so you can focus more on heavy attacks, which is going to give you a better application of the chilled status effect than the Wall of Elements. So either way you go, you can do that. Next up, the Betty Netch. On the back bar, we have an ability called Frozen Expanse. Now, you can choose if you want to run Frozen Expanse or you want to run the Betty Netch. You really don't need Betty Netch because you don't need the magic return, and you're already using a power pot to increase your crit and your spell damage. So you don't really need it, but if you do want to swap it out, you can. So I just want to kind of point that out to you guys. So just make sure, again, you make sure you get all your class passes, even though you're not using the abilities that could benefit from them. It doesn't matter because you never know. You might find something later on that works a little better than something you're already using, so swapping out a few skills might help. Destruction Staff, you want to make sure you get all the passes except for the top one. When you're using an Ice Staff as damage or as any kind of thing other than tanking, never fill out the top one. Just go ahead and fill out the rest, though. It's fine. On the Restoration Staff, make sure you fill in all the passives. It's a given. I mean, you have to. So when it comes to the armor passives, we are only wearing 7 pieces of light, so you only need to fill out the light armor passives. If you are using the 5-1-1 setup, you do want to fill in dexterity, windwalker, and athletics. I know a lot of people don't do that, but it is still good to have because you never know. Heavy armor, always fill in the top 3. Don't worry about the bottom 2 because they're not going to benefit you if you're not wearing any heavy armor. When it comes to soul magic, I always fill in the top 2. Unless I'm playing a vampire werewolf, which are also world skills, then I fill in theirs as well. None of my healers are that, so... moving on. Fighters Guild, always fill in intimidating presence and banished wicked. Mage's Guild, presence, persuasive will. Now, if you are running Mage Light on the bar anywhere, you always want to make sure you get magic controller, because anytime you have a magic, Mage's Guild ability slotted, you get magic recovery and extra... max magicka, so it's gonna be really small, but it still helps out. Undaunted, get energy orb, but always make sure you get these 2 passives, and then also down here, make sure you get the support passive, magical aid, from the Alliance War. This helps with your cleanse and your reviving barrier. You want them on opposite bars, so it'll give you that 10%, unless you're running something like guard or siege shield, or you're playing PvP kind of thing. Breton, always fill in the passives, and then crafting, always get medicinal use. Medicinal use is super important. Now, you don't have to worry so much about the provisioning unless you're using 1 hour food. If you're using 1 hour food, then get provisioning, the Gourmand and Carnosaur, but if you're not, don't worry about it. Because if you're using a 2 hour food, there's no reason to get this, because it already lasts 2 hours. It does add to the 2 hours, but 20 minutes to 2 hours versus an hour... The trade-off, it really tells you, 20 minutes here on the 1 hour is better than on 2 hour. But you can still unlock it even with 2 hour food. Alright, so let's go over the skills. So on the main bar, we are running Unstable Wall of Frost. Now I choose Unstable Wall on my healer because any frost damage you deal has a chance to apply Chilled. Chilled, what that can do is it can also immobilize the enemies standing in the Wall of Frost. So... as long as they're chilled, they can become immobilized. But chilled itself applies minor maim. Minor maim means less damage done. 15% less damage done. Now, it only lasts for 4 seconds, which is the equivalent to, say, Talons. Unless you're using Sword and Board, where you get a 12-second minor maim. So, but it's still really good to have. On to the next one. We are running Enchanted Growth. This is like your best heal you have. This is your best burst heal. Now, it looks really low there, but when you drink your potion, it goes up almost to 7,000, and if you crit heal with this thing, it can crit heal for like 12 to 14k, which is really good. So this is your main burst heal you're going to be doing, but it also applies minor intellect and minor endurance, which increases both magic and stamina recovery by 10%. So it's really good for a Warden healer to use it. Next up, we have Budding Seeds. Budding Seeds is a really good heal. So you summon a field of flowers over 6 seconds, healing you and your allies in the area for 10,342 for only 1 field, and you can only have 1 field active at a time. But while the field grows, you can activate it again, the ability again, to cause it to instantly bloom. As an ally within the field can activate Harvest Synergy, healing everyone over 5 seconds. So it's a good heal and a good synergy. So both, it's a good reason to have it for both reasons. If you know somebody you're going to synergize off it, you can just throw it out, and they can synergize and get a heal over time. If you need to activate it, just cast it again. You can automatically add a 10k heal. So it's a really powerful heal. Next up, we have Elemental Drain. Now, you do not have to run this. One of your DPS can run this if need be, but the reason you run it is because of the support aspect of it, which is the magicka return for your whole entire party. Your tanks can utilize that 300 magicka, your healers can, you can utilize it, the DPS can utilize it, even stamina DPS can use that extra 300 magicka every second for any time that they deal damage. So it's a really good way to keep magicka return coming in for your group. Next up, we are using Cleanse. Now, I usually use Efficient Purge, but I chose Cleanse this time because it has a heal at the end. So if a negative effect is removed, the target is healed for 20% of their max health. So if you're in, like, say, Halls of Fabrication, you pop this, your people are going to heal if any conditions are purged. So it's kind of a nice way. Now, if you notice the Magicka cost versus Magicka return, it comes back really quick with that skill because you have such a high magic return. Even though it's only like 2k of the skill, it's still good to have. Next up, Aggressive Warhorn. You know, and I'll be honest with you guys, it doesn't, you know, like, Aggressive Warhorn's good if you're shooting for numbers. But if you're working towards just clearing the in-game content, it doesn't matter which Warhorn you use. But this does definitely help improve your chances of clearing it faster because of major force buff on it. But what Aggressive Warhorn does is gives you max health, max magicka, max stamina by 10% for 30 seconds. And then the next part applies major force, increasing your group's damage done. But they have to be within 20 meters. Anyone within 20 meters of you gets that major force for 10 seconds almost. Now, major force is really good if you're shooting for in-game competitive, or if you're shooting for clearing the content a little faster. But you need to know when to time and use it. Otherwise, it's kind of a useless skill. If you're just firing it off when it's off cooldown, it's kind of goes to a waste. It's better to activate keep a Warhorn active, but also try to time it for those burst situations. Okay, the boss just did his mega AoE at 25% health, you know, because we removed 25% at 75% health. He's going to do a big attack here in a second. After that big attack, we're going to use Warhorn, and everyone's going to go in and beat on the boss so they get that bonus damage. That's what timing is. And that's why when you really need to watch when you time Warhorn's use, is for situations like that. So moving on to the back bar, we have Energy Orb. Now, Energy Orb is a very, very good ability because it heals as it passes through. If somebody activates it, it also heals. Now, it's a synergy ability, so you do get the Undaunted synergy bonus to it, to where it'll, like, give magicka back, you know, like extra magicka, stamina, all that kind of stuff, when they synergize off your stuff. But it also gives them magic or stamina depending on which one they have lower, or they have the most of. So if they have more magicka, or magicka DPS, or stamina DPS, or a tank, or heat, you know, whatever, they're going to get their main resource back. And it also heals in an area. So it's a really nice, like, burst heal. It's a really nice synergy. It just works out really good. But you have to make sure you activate the synergy. Next up, we have Healing Springs. A really good heal over time for 3 seconds. It heals for almost 2k per tick, and will heal for 2k with your power pot. But it also returns magicka to you for each friendly target healed. Now, if there's 3 targets, you'll get 1,000 magicka back. Now, look how much it costs, 2,577. If you get, you activate, you know, you cast it and you hit 3 targets, and it heals all 3, you're going to get almost half the cost. You're going to get 1,000 almost back of the cost. And then your 2,000 magic recovery takes up the rest. So you can literally almost spam this indefinitely. And that's what makes it so nice. Next up is Combat Prayer. Combat Prayer is a really good ability, but honestly, and I will be honest with you guys, the length of time that the buffs last off of this can be good, but if you're not casting it every 8 seconds, it's kind of useless. Unless you're doing it where you, okay, Warhorn, Combat Prayer. Then it's not useless. Because it applies that Minor Berserk, Minor Resolve, Minor Ward for 8 seconds, which is almost equal to that 9.5 from Warhorn. Now, if you time it right, when you cast Warhorn, you swap bars, you cast this, 1 second or 2 seconds will have passed. So they'll go from the 9.5 to 7.5, so you'll get 8% increased damage consecutive. You got to time it, though. Alright, next up is Healing Ward. Really good heal. When you cast it on somebody, it'll heal them, but it also applies a damage shield. It's kind of small, but it grows in strength depending on how much health they have when it applies. So let's say they're at 30% health, and you cast this, and it applies to them. They get a bigger shield, and they get a heal from it, and then they get a heal when the shield expires. So when it's removed, if the shield's removed in a few hits, they will heal for a chunk of health. So it's a really good damage shield for group support. And the fact that it heals is really nice. So, next up is Expansive Frost Cloak. Now, this is super awesome. This applies in a 28-meter radius. It applies a protective cloak of ice on your allies that applies major ward and major resolve. So you remember that Warhorn thing I told you about? You're going to do combat prayer right, combat prayer right afterwards. So you pop combat prayer, pop expansive frost cloak, and now everyone's resistances go up to the highest maximum potential because you just gave them, your whole group, that extra resistance buff. Plus you gave them that minor buff from minor ward, minor resolve from combat prayer. So it's a good way to kind of make sure that, okay, I know at this time I'm going to be casting this. Cast it, cast it, cast it. So you get all those benefits on your group during that burst session. Because that boss is still going to do light and heavy attacks and possibly some other abilities, but this way you can help mitigate some of that damage, and you have all those heals going out anyways that can help. Alright, so moving on. Next up we have Reviving Barrier. Best damage shield in the game, regardless of what minis say. It is the best damage shield in the game. It has a 12-meter radius around you. It's actually quite big, but it puts the biggest damage shield and longest lasting damage shield on those people in that 12-meter radius. It is a 31k damage shield with a 2,000 or 22,000 heal over 30 seconds. Now, to some people, 30 seconds, they're like, oh wow, but it's 1.5k a heal. And that can crit heal. Every time it ticks, it'll crit heal. It has a chance to crit heal. So this is a really good damage shield. Like I said, the best in the game for support. So use it wisely and use it in basically those oh poop moments. Like, oh, we're fighting this boss. It's just ripping us apart. Damage shield. Whoosh. It saves people. It'll heal them while it's going on. Now, a lot of people don't use it in in-game and trials and stuff, but it works really good in trials. It really does. And that is it for the skills. Now we're going to jump into the champion points. Now the champion points, again, guys, you're going to notice that I use a lot of similar setups, and that's because you don't have a lot of choices. Like, you have a lot of choice to where you place points in the champion points, but you don't have a lot of choices in how to make it really work for each role. I mean, each role is going to be about the same. It doesn't matter whether it's a tank, a healer, DPS. A lot of them are going to be very similar to each other because of what you're trying to do with them. So, and I got this brought to my attention. Why are your champion points always the same? Well, that's why. There's not a lot of options. So starting off here, we have 37 in Ironclad. This reduces damage taken from direct damage attacks by 15%. This really helps, guys. It does. It might not seem like it, but it does help with you know, surviving major hits and stuff. Any kind of thing you can do to reduce the damage you take, the better off you are, whether you're a tank, a healer, or damage dealer. So the red tree is really good for damage mitigation. That's what it's all about. And the more points you put in there, the more health you get. So, alright, moving on. 37 into Thick Skin. This reduces damage taken from damage over time by 15%. I had 8 points left over, so I put it in the light armor focus. As you can see, it gives us 811 physical resistance, because there's really no other place to put it. Because you don't need any of the other stuff right now. What you need is survivability. When it comes to in-game, it's about survivability. Now, you have damage shields, you have heals, that's good, but mitigating damage is also just as good. So I put the 8 leftover points I had in here. Put 43 into Hardy, 43 into Elemental Defender. This both give you 10% damage reduction from pretty much any damage source. So try to keep both of these around 43 so you can get that 10%. It's a flat 10%. And Thick Skin, Ironclad both stack with them. Now the next ability I'm going to talk about, or passive, is Expert Defender. And I want to go over this really, really good on this one. This is essential to both PvE and PvP. Most mobs in PvE do a lot of light and heavy attacks. Now they do use abilities, but they use more light and heavy attacks than they do special abilities, including bosses. So having 10% damage reduction from that is really good. And that 10% does stack with Ironclad Expert, or with Ironclad over here. It does stack with this on heavy attacks from Resto Staves and Lightning Staves. So just letting you know. So in PvP, it does stack with this, and then it stacks with these as well. So you can get a total of a 35% damage reduction because of it. Alright, next up we have 56 into Bastion. This increases the effectiveness of damage shields by 20%. Damage shields are always used by healers, 90% of the time, to apply to the group in any game you play. And getting that greater effect on those damage shields really helps out. It can save a group, especially in those oh poop moments. And I don't like to use a lot of foul words, so I'm gonna use the corny, childish words for it. So yeah, but it's those oh poop moments. You need that protection. That's where you get it from. It is from damage shields. Moving on, we have 23 into Warlord, 21 into Sprinter. One gives you 10% break free cost, one gives you 13% sprint reduced cost. And here's the thing. Somebody said, well, it's better to put 100 points into the next two that we're going to be showing off than putting into these. Is it? 1% extra versus the 10% I save on stamina whenever I break free, whenever I sprint, whenever I block, whenever I dodge roll. Saves me resources in my stamina pool, which is already really small for being a healer. This game is about saving resources. It's about managing resources. So anything I can do as a player to save me the cost of something, I need to use it. If I'm not using it, it's a wasted thing. And that means when I do break free, it's going to cost me 10%. It's going to cost me the regular amount. But 10% less saves me just a little bit of resources to where hey, you know, I just broke free and I got this guy getting ready to heavy attack me. I'm going to dodge roll. And that's resource management. That's part of it. Reducing the cost of things. And I do that already with the heals because I'm a Breton. I get 3% spell cost reduction. And then I have 2 glyphs that reduce my spell cost by 406. So I actually get better spell cost with my Breton. And I don't get a lot of stamina cost stuff. So this saves stamina. And the fact that I'm only getting 1% out of both of these, honestly, if I can take those 25 points and put it into better use, I'm going to do it. I'm just saying. I'm not trying to be rude, it's the truth. 1% versus 10% saving of resources, you tell me, what sounds better? 1% extra magic recovery, or 10% reduced cost in your blocking, or 10% reduced cost in your dodge roll, or 10% reduced cost in your break free? I think the math says it itself. And if I'm wrong, you got to prove it. And I'm already proving that it's better to do this. Because 1% doesn't amount to nothing. And literally, that's how it sounds. That's exactly what it is. It doesn't amount to enough for anything. When you can take that 1% and turn it into a 10% resource save. So I'm just pointing that out. It's not me trying to be rude, it's the truth. So we have 75 in Arcanist for 14% magic recovery. We have 75 into Magicka, into Tenaxity for your Magicka or stamina return from your fully charged heavy attacks. This is that extra percentage I was talking about earlier with using a Resto Staff, and it's like passive 30%, the base 30%, which is 60. Now you have 74% return. And 74%, remember, I pointed it out with that number, that's 74% plus that number again. So you're getting a huge chunk of resources back. And it saves you time on trying to heavy attack when you only have like 600 magic recovery or 600 stamina recovery. So moving on over here, we have 23 into Tumbling, 23 into Shadow Ward. That's 10% block cost and 10% on dodge rolls. And you get some other cool things, like you get Fortune Seeker, which increases the gold find you find in a treasure chest. You get Merchant Forward, which reduces your repairing cost, which is 10%. It does more than what you guys think. You also get Inspirational Boost, which increases your crafting experience, and you get Ensnare. That whenever you bash an enemy, you have a 33% chance to remove their movement speed by 20% for 3 seconds, which is good. Even as a healer, tank, or DPS, it's all that is going to be good. It's not super beneficial, but it's still beneficial. It's another 10%, or it's another this, or it's another that. So, moving on to the final tree, which is the Mage's Tree. We're going to start in the Apprentice with Blessed, 75 points. This gives us 14% healing done. We don't have a lot of healing done as a Warden. You don't get like minor mending or anything like that. You can get major mending if the person you heal is below 40% health, but that doesn't happen once too often unless it's a DPS. And because the tank should never drop below 40% health. But still, my point is, you don't have enough. That's why we're wearing that monster, or that one set, the Druga's Rest, that gives 2% healing done. That makes our healing done 16%. And on the front bar, we have a way of getting extra healing done because we have 2 wilderness abilities, so we get another 4% there. So that 16% is now 19%, or 20%, sorry, 20%, and that's 20% healing done from the 2 natural heals you have from your class. Now on the back bar, you have a thing called a heavy attack. If you heavy attack and then heal, you're going to get 25% healing done. So it does add to this 14%. So on the back bar, you do want to do a lot of heavy attacks, but you already have a lot of resource management. So you're like, why am I going to heavy attack? Because you need that major mending from the resto staff. So, just letting you know. Otherwise, you're just getting 16%, sorry, on the heals. Next up, we have 56 in the Elfborn. Now, Elfborn is really good, but you don't want to overheal or underheal your allies. Now, overhealing is when you have too many points into something that gives you too much healing. And that's where this comes into play, because this increases critical healing and critical damage. Now, as a healer, you don't want to overheal. So you don't want to, I mean, it's nice to overheal, it really is, but you don't want to overheal so much that you're just wasting resources. But you do want to heal, and critical healing is super important. Now, you can take this up to 100 points and get 5% more healing, but that 5% more critical healing is overhealing. I know it sounds weird. How's that overhealing? Because you're getting too much healing done. You don't need it. 20% is perfect. And the critical damage bonus it gives you applies to the damage you can do as a healer. Now, healers aren't DPS. They're like tanks. They're not damage dealers. They have a specific role. And their role is tank and healer. And healers don't do a lot of damage anyways. But anything you can do to boost the group's overall damage is beneficial. So whether you're playing a healer or tank, if you can add more damage to your group, guess what that means? More damage being done means more faster runs. So instead of taking this up to 100 and this up to 100, I decided on something else. I want to build my character out to do extra damage. Because I do light and heavy attacks. Yes, I use a wall of elements. And if I'm running around in the open world, I need some way of surviving while I'm playing the open world. And damage is it. Because you have to kill things. So I build in the damage. So I put 43 in the Elemental Expert. This increases Flame, Frost, Shock, and Magic damage by 10%. Remember, we get 6% Frost damage and Magic damage already as a Warden. As one of the passives. You add that 6% to 10%, that's 16% damage done. Now, what kind of damage do healers do? Light and heavy attacks, just like tanks. They focus on light and heavy attacks. Heavy attacks for resource return, light attacks for extra, just to proc extra damage. Just to get extra damage out. Now, you can put 4 points in the spell erosion because you're not going to have a lot of points to put anywhere else. Next up, you can put 16 into Physical Weapon Expert. This increases, or sorry, Staff Expert. My bad. I was probably thinking tank, guys, because I did so many tanks last week. but you want to put into Staff Expert, this gives you 10% damage increase to your light and heavy attacks, and this gives you 20, with 23 points, gives you 10% increase to direct damage. Light and heavy attacks, initial hits, like light attacks will always be direct damage. Heavy attacks from resto or from resto staves is direct damage. Ice staff, your heavy attack is direct damage. So boosting that damage is going to be really important. So that's 20% there, and then 10% here, or 16% here. That's 36% increase in your light and heavy attack damage. That's really good. It's not a lot, but it's really good. For a healer, that's really good, because that improves your DPS output. Now, you're not a damage dealer, like I said, but anything you can do to increase the total damage output of your group, the better off you are. So having a healer do damage just as much as a DPS or a tank, or, you know, like as much damage as they can do, is going to help the group. And this allows you to do that. So that's why I do this, guys. Moving on over here, we have 23 into Thaumaturge. This increases the damage you do with damage over time abilities by 10%. That includes the damage from things like your Wall of Elements, and in your class, your Growing Swarm, and also in your Winter's Embrace, if you're using like Impaling Shards, or you're using Arctic Wind with the damage version, or even Sleet Storm, you're gonna get more damage from it, from the Thaumaturge. And that's it for the champion points. Let's get into the build in action real quick, just so you guys can see what it looks like and how it works. Because people keep asking me, you know, you need to show some of these builds in play. I can't show you dungeon runs because it's just me. Okay, I don't have a lot of people that I can test on PTS with besides other testers, and a lot of them are already into their niche groups. You know, we got, like, for example, I know some Hodor players are on here, and they're all testing the dungeons, you know, and things like that. Like, I know Outcast is with, you know, there. He has his own group that he plays with. I don't have people on PTS like that, except for on Saturday and Sunday. And so I can't do a lot of, like, gameplay videos except for those days, showing you guys the builds in action. And I would love to do that. I really would. So here we go. This is the build. And basically, if you focus on doing heavy attacks, like I said with the staff, you have a good chance of getting that, that proc. But you guys notice that I also have that heal going off from that ability, from the one thing. Now, if I can get it to proc the pet, the monster set, which isn't hard, usually. Usually it will proc that you know, that Chokethorn set. So, and it can proc it. It's just, for some reason, it was being all finicky and was like, nope, I'm not going to proc it. I'm going to proc it when you're least expecting it. And it does that too. But that's pretty much the build. I mean, it's not complicated to understand. It's just, you play it, you enjoy it. If you do, great. If not, hey. And you remember when I told you guys, like, the original Shaman build was different? And I remember now why I had Sword and Shield, like the physical weapon expert unlocked, and not the staff. Yeah, the Shaman was originally a medium armor tank that I made that used a lot of healing and dots. So it was, I used the Sword and Shield for tanking, and then I used some of the other class abilities and some of the other things for dots and heals and things like that. It was pretty cool. I liked it. But I changed it to this because this is how a healer should be, is heals, not trying to tank and heal and everything. But you can still do that as an off tank. And that is the Shaman. So I hope you guys like this build. If you guys do, please hit that like button. If you guys want to see more videos by me, hit the subscribe button. Other than that, I have one last thing to say. Those looking for the support healer Warden might want to keep an eye out for the next build. And the next build's called the Druid. It's a stamina healer. It's not really a healer, it's more like a group support, but it has healing, group buffs, debuffs, all that kind of, it's crazy. You guys will see it when I get it out. And that will be coming out next. So both these builds are getting released at the same time, so check that build out when you get done with this one, or check that one out and then check this one out. Either way, it's up to you. So thanks for watching. Till next time, have a wonderful day. This guy might see you in game. Bye!